It's been more than 20 years since the end of apartheid. Like many iconic cities, Cape Town's reputation precedes it. I've heard the same thing from friends and colleagues around the world. Man, the beaches, the food, the wine. But outside that glossy, gentrified, rich, and incredibly white urban bubble, has the power of democracy and the quest for equality improved lives here on the Cape? Is urbanism being used as an effective tool for urban change? We're heading deep into the real and raw urban landscape of a modern Cape Town. Cape Town tops the list of every travel blog these days. Photos show a modern, glossy city, a beautiful place filled with people having the time of their lives. But this idyllic imagery fails to reflect the reality and the complexity of this multi-layered city. Don't get me wrong, the place is truly amazing, but for reasons that go well beyond what the picture postcards would have you believe. Let me summarize the basics. 1948. Apartheid is implemented in South Africa. Based on white supremacy, segregation is at the core of a social system that now controls everyday life. It dictates where you can live, what job you can have, who you can marry, which seat you can take on public transportation, all depending on whether you're considered white, black, or colored. A South African term arbitrarily designating people who didn't identify as black or white, or people of mixed-race ancestry. Nationwide, more than 3.5 million people are displaced, removed from their homes, and relocated in racially separated communities. People of all origins resist, protest, demand change, and they end up in jail, as did Nelson Mandela, the most famous, if we can use that word, of all South African prisoners. Such a regime could never be sustainable. After signs of weakness, it finally disintegrates in 1991. Mandela and the African National Congress, the ANC, triumph in '94 in the country's first ever democratic elections. A few decades have passed. Cape Town now makes the headlines for its laid-back lifestyle and its natural beauty. But beneath the sales pitch, traces of a dark past still linger. Nearly 40% of the city's population lives below the poverty line, and radical disparities remain in health and access to education, among other things. As I walk the streets of this breathtaking but divided city, I hope there's enough willpower to keep it all going, to allow everyone here to see the light at the end of a very long tunnel.
The real Cape Town is one of a divided city. That's the reality, which includes the area we're in right now, which is a great place to live and a great place to visit, yet it is joined on to the rest of the city in the greater metropolitan area, which has 101 socio and economic problems to solve. There's huge amounts of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. For the day-to-day life of many Cape Townians is far from good. It's pretty bad. Part of me feels I'm back in 1987, almost under the state of the emergency under the old apartheid government. It's
wow.
That sort of, not in terms of personal safety, not at all, but in terms of closing down of space. And yet at the same time, we had optimism at that stage, and we have optimism now that it can be turned around again, because South Africans are pretty resilient.
And let me tell you, Andrew Boraine knows a thing or two about resilience. He was there, at the heart of it all, when democracy finally found its way back in. In fact, he was a senior official in the Mandela government and became Cape Town's first post-apartheid city manager. Activist and writer, he is one of the city's most lucid observers and a relentless advocate for change. Urban design was used to separate, to segregate. Yeah. Do you deconstruct that, or can you adapt it to the new reality?
I mean, there's the physical. Where do you put affordable housing, and how do you keep it affordable because once it's in a market, and if the market's going up, it rapidly becomes unaffordable again. It's about access and mobility. There's no ways that everyone living in the townships in a dispersed urban sprawl gets back into concentrated downtown urban areas. So better public transport is another way of integrating the city. If we just rely on government to solve all the complex problems, we're not going to get anywhere. Citizens have got to be involved, private sector's got to be involved, NGOs, academics and researchers have got to be involved. And I just don't think we have enough capacity in the political and state system in South Africa, in Cape Town, to solve all these complex questions.
Now, of course, there are a lot of good people doing a lot of good things in Cape Town. But I mean, just the vast scale of the issues that you're facing, is it enough with, helping this neighborhood here and there and empowering some people? But I mean, how do you scale it up?
Well, it's not enough. I mean, if you help 10 families well, that's great. But there's 100,000 families that need that sort of help. Civic movements or social movements on their own are not going to bring change. How do you link the change agents within government with the change agents outside of government? We've got some really good engineers, we've got some really good finance people, but if you don't put the right leaders in place, and if the leaders aren't prepared to work with other leaders, then we're not going to solve the situation. So don't give me resources, give me collaborative leadership.
Are you optimistic for the future of the city? It's a long pause.
In a sense, I feel that we're in a similar transition period that we were in 1980. It could have gone really bad. It happened to go quite a good direction with the release of Mandela, the sort of negotiated transition. But we didn't solve all our problems there. Perhaps we covered up some of them then. And now we've got to face them. It's irrelevant whether I'm an optimist or pessimist. It depends on how well people are going to defend the democracy. Distributed leadership throughout the system, that's what we need.
You're looking down at Cape Town from the air. You see the spatial planning implemented by the apartheid regime. You see the grand motorways and the train lines separating the neighborhoods. The poor black Africans, the colors, and of course the whites in the downtown area.
In short, segregated urban planning has left very deep scars on generations of Cape Townians. It has also created a troubling network of physical divisions, staggering to look at from up here. It's a citywide urban fingerprint of a once dominant racist ideology.
One of the primary differences you see from the air is the basic geometry. You have the informal settlements completely organic and random in their structure. The formal settlements that the city is building for the people, you start to see the squares like we know from many cities around the world. It really is amazing to see it from the air. The differences in the geometry, the differences in the color, the differences in the space that they are using. Postage stamp size houses in the informal settlements, and then the space grows with prosperity until you get to the wealthy neighborhoods who have, almost an entire golf course in their backyard.
More than 20 years after the end of official segregation, people still live within the spatial separation implemented during apartheid. Whites are in the downtown and the rich suburbs. Blacks and coloreds stay in their designated townships. In and around these townships, people have ended up building informal settlements with no property deeds and, more often than not, no basic services. But hey, you have to live somewhere, raise your kids, build a home. There are you ready for this? 437 informal settlements in Cape Town. 437. I meet Sizwe Moksobo in PJS, an informal settlement in the township of Kailicha, one of South Africa's largest. PJS is short for Section P Joe Slovo. Because like many other informal settlements, the place was named after an anti-apartheid activist. And this one, Joe Slovo, was a former housing minister in the Mandela government. To this day, PJS is still not considered permanent, even though it was established in 1989.
So you have your central CBD and moving out, all those places close to the city. That's
White.
your whites only.
Yeah.
And then second, you've got your colored area. Now let's set at the edge of the city. Let's set all the blacks here. So even today, if you go on N2 around the city, you will see every time when you cross a bridge, you get a different setting. And that setting could start spelling out who lives there, the type of planning that's happening there, what's allowed to happen there.
Sizwe was born and raised in a similar neighborhood in the township of Nyanga. Despite poverty and racism, he has now become a successful urban planner and still lives in an informal settlement, just like 25% of his fellow Cape Townians.
There's no paved roads, there's no planned pathways. This is a negotiated pathway that we see here. And this would have been left over time by people saying, okay, this works as a main road. But there's no formal services. Then obviously the building material is more your zinc and wood material. So it's not your formal brick and mortar structures. And people are not allowed to build or to use that type of material because then it would signify some sort of permanency. The view over this is temporal living of some sort. So there's the planned township, which will have your formal houses. But then there would be other stuff that's planned within the planned township that would live these open spaces that we see. So if you look there, that's the formal houses there. This would have been a pocket maybe left for business zoning, right? But no business ever came in. So there's then the informal settlement, which grows out of the people's need to create their own spaces. Sorry. What are they saying? Abelungu, and shouting and really happy. But what they're saying is white people. And it's because of that apartheid planning. Because you never see white people on this side of town.
But it's not negative, it's positive.
Yeah, it's like, a celebration of
oh my God, it's a white guy. All right, okay.
Yes. So that celebration coming from the fact that there's not integration happening.
We're walking around all the beautiful kids, and it's kind of it seems friendly. It seems very life-sized as well. I mean, how dangerous is this informal settlement if we're talking gangs or crime?
And so there's your everyday robbery, right? From the youth's lack of activities or lack of jobs. So, but then again, it's not that dangerous. During the day, it's fine. The problem is during the night when darkness comes, because then there's no easy security around it to look. So people will lock themselves behind their yards and create their own private space. So security is a challenge because there's a lot of gaps in between the houses. For criminals, it's easy to just do something here and disappear throughout.
What about lighting? That huge light pole. There's also another one right there. Who put those in?
Government. Like there's toilets here to try and say, okay, we'll bring in flush toilets, but those are communal toilets. The problem is in the accounting though. Policy says 1 toilet for 5 shacks, right? It doesn't take into account how many people live in those 5 shacks to share one.
I think we can agree that toilets are, well, a basic human necessity. Here in PJS, they are few and far between. Only 114 toilets for 900 households. Most of them are either temporary, broken, or isolated. And this, of course, can lead to major issues. For obvious sanitary reasons, you don't want a toilet near where your kids play. On the other hand, if they're too far from the shacks, you risk being mugged, raped, or even killed, just going to the bathroom.
For me, growing up pre-1994 as an 80s kid, right? So I started wondering, what would it take to shift this informality and make it formal? Why can't we be upgraded where we are? Is what drove me from primary school to high school to come and study town planning, which I won't lie, I had no clue that a profession such as town planning existed.
But you come from a place where really everybody's a town planner, right? You're all contributing to building the neighborhood and keeping it safe.
In my time when I was at CPUT, there was never much being taught about looking at informality as a way. So the traditional thinking was still there. You deal with informal settlement by moving everyone and planning a new settlement.
Sizwe, through his work with a local NGO called DAG, the Development Action Group, proposes what he calls reblocking. This involves reimagining the settlement with members of the community so it can better fit their needs. Together, they design a new layout by moving a few shacks, adding a road, creating a courtyard for kids to play, planting a food garden, installing clotheslines. They also make sure the government has enough space to install basic services like running water, electricity, and toilets.
There's a lot of space in between. So how do we consolidate that space? How do we reorganize the shape of the shack so that it makes it more functional to achieve more? So how do we optimize this space that we have?
If we can move people around, then we can actually have the walkway around there. And that's our sewer. As we don't have toilets around here, which we can open the toilets around here.
I mean, is the community willing to do that, to be moved around?
That's actually one of the things that we are going to propose to the community.
Okay.
Also, if you see here, this is an old building. There's no one who's staying there. So we see that this we can use as a community facility for our youth, because our youth don't have the hall whereby they can show their talent. So we can use this building as our community facility.
Do you feel that you can change things yourself now that you are focusing on this?
I think so. That's my hope.
It's your hope? Are you optimistic when you start focusing on this?
Yes.
For me, I think I've come from saying maybe the biggest thing that we need is to get everyone, especially the community level, believing in themselves to bring change. Because then if we expect it to come from the outside, that's going to take another 10 years, 20 years. But if we can get people who have protested to start creating their own plans and saying, look, this is what we want. Can we, for the time being, while we're still waiting for things to be better, while we're still waiting and trying to figure things out, can we work on this? Can we see what negotiations can we take? That for me is the start of creating that change. But we need to get there, people creating their own change.
When you live in an informal community like here in PJS in Cape Town, or anyone like it anywhere else in the world, and the municipality refuses to acknowledge your existence, or perhaps just reluctantly does so, empowering the community to gather information, to map out the place, to collect data, is proof of life. And that provides not only hope, but dignity. And that is a powerful place to start working towards change.
This concourse was only for white people originally, and there's a second concourse at the other end of the platforms, which is designed for the rest of us, including myself. And some of the lines are also service what was predominantly white and more privileged parts of the city. So the way the services were organized is sort of supplemented the spatial organization of the building as well, and that was the control. Essentially, petty laws that kind of controlled how people moved. So where you could sit, where you could move through, which bathroom you could use and which you can't. All of that was designed around the separation of races.
This is Cape Town's Central Train Terminal, and here change is very apparent. Built in 1966, it was long considered the most explicit expression of apartheid ideology. Khalid Jacobs, an architect, was part of the team who completely redesigned the station in 2010. And it wasn't only about aesthetics. Their goal was to erase traces of spatial segregation.
The things that we had to get to understand is how to reuse existing infrastructure. We didn't have the resources to simply flatten the station and rebuild an efficient station. To reinterpret this place as a gateway into the city. The space that is organized to separate races was inverted. Right? So these turnstiles then became accessible to everybody. Right. There's an agglomeration of minor changes that made a dramatic impact in terms of how it looks and feels and how one used it.
Khalid and his team added windows. They centralized the ticketing system. They opened up the facade to make a large public space. All of this so commuters would mix, bump into each other, see each other, no matter where they came from, be it the rich and white CBD or the most distant township. The idea was to create a space that was for everyone. Even the vendors, once clogging the main floor, were offered an open-air rooftop market instead of eviction.
What was up here before?
There was a market here before as well. But what we did in 2010 was we consolidated the market into a single market, and we reorganized them with formal structures. We supported with additional services like bathrooms and the like. But we also linked the existing taxi rank to the train station. And that route, the pedestrian connection, is where all this life transpired.
So this is also an A to B corridor as well as, well, that's where you put the shops on an A to B corridor. I mean, that's basic market economy, right? But
absolutely.
Okay, well, that's what creates the dynamic here.
We start to understand that the scale of this building equates to 25 city blocks.
25 city blocks, yeah.
So the scale is enormous, right? So the challenge, of course, is we're sitting with a piece of infrastructure that is necessary to underpin the city.
I like the sign, it says no illegal traders, and it provides some shade to the illegal traders. I find that a nice irony. And the informal is from necessity, of course, right? And then the need for formalization. It's just like, I've always wondered where the balance is. How much of that do you keep?
This is where the contradiction is between the laws and what happens, right? So the laws talks about cleaning, whereas disruption talks about how one engraves one's own identity in the making of your space. Mm-hmm. That is unlikely to happen with an instant city or with a set of rules. So the richness of the culture and the day-to-day living is able to be expressed in the making of city by people contributing to that making.
Redefining the central station's role was a great step for Cape Town. But creating an inclusive city is also about bringing vitality to neglected places. So when Khalid and his team were commissioned to create a bike lane on Spine Road in the township of Khayelitsha, they used the infrastructure budget to kickstart something much bigger, transforming Spine Road into a vibrant street revolving around the needs of its citizens.
So that implies getting all these properties that has the backs facing the street to become the fronts, where the people who live in this community can find space to spend time. So one of the first interventions that we had done, in addition to putting the infrastructure, was to organize some of the informal meat traders to arrange them to organize themselves around it.
Right.
So you can see the energy that is spontaneously being developed. This is a Friday night. They come in to party. Yeah. They are dressed to the nines. Yeah. And they come to socialize as well in a place.
You created a framework, and the people went, I get that.
And occupy.
And they occupy it.
So it's design without using a pen and a paper. So what we see on this side here is people that have started to organize themselves around that space.
Mm-hmm. And this is more permanent. This is a container converted to, for chips, chicken wings, barbershop.
But the idea is that eventually it becomes a built environment, where you bring living conditions plus trading plus social environments all in the same space. It's about real trade and real life experiences of the man in the street. So this is the very first property that changed its back to its front, removed the fence and opened up his B&B to the street. And he influenced these neighbors that very quickly turned their backs into fronts. Yeah. And over time, a few restaurants opened, the corners became activated, so it became a social event. You come a lot on a Friday night.
Every weekend.
Every weekend.
Consistently.
This is the place to be, right?
Yes. This is Spine Road. The road, I tell you. Come on, 1, 2, 3.
Town planning in particular was a tool that's implicated in the apartheid narrative. Right? Now it's a responsibility for urban design and people in the planning professions to begin using the same tools to regenerate a new narrative for how we make cities.
As is the case in every city I've visited, the place where people live impacts how they perceive their own world. But it's even more important here, in Cape Town. Central neighborhoods are still predominantly white and rich. But now, it isn't because the law imposes it, but rather because affordable housing is a scarce commodity.
We're just outside downtown Cape Town in a neighborhood called Woodstock. Traditional working class neighborhood now rapidly being gentrified. With the scale of the housing crisis that this city is facing, for some activists, taking matters into their own hands means employing a tried and tested technique: squatting, occupying an old building in order to insist on a better future for housing in this city. Knock, knock. Hello. Hi, Sarita. Hi. Yeah, thanks for having us. What is the history of this building originally?
So this building used to be a government hospital. At the moment, only part of it is still functioning as a government hospital, but it has been empty for 8 years.
Sarita Pillai works with Reclaim the City, an activist movement that fights for affordable housing in central neighborhoods, hoping to reverse the consequences of segregation and isolation.
Now there are people living in here, families living in here, children living in here. I'm sure you'll get a chance to speak to some of the activists.
Keep calm and let's find you a new home. Right there.
Yeah. So exactly, people have made this their home now. Well, this is the communal kitchen.
Hi.
Shanika, pleased to meet you.
And you're one of the residents?
Yes.
And how long have you been living here?
I've been living here for 7 months now.
7 months?
Yeah,
okay.
Me and my family, my 2 little ones, girls, and my husband.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Where did you live before?
I lived before in Pelican Park where I was evicted.
For now, do you like living here while you're occupying? There's a movement, of course, but...
Yes, and I've learned so much since I've been. It's not only for me living here because I need a roof over my head. I've been learning so much because we've got workshops going. I just want to go on.
If you find a permanent place to live, I mean, you still feel like you're going to be part of the movement.
I will still be part of the movement.
You can see people are living here, and Comrade Bevel.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Hello.
And you're in your room?
Yeah, this is my space that I occupy here. I am a property owner, but I've been a political social activist for most of my life. And so this for me is an important part to show that it's not all property owners who support the opposition to working class people living in the area. Okay. I mean, where these rooms are closed, there are families living in there that they've cleaned up and that they've made it their homes now.
There's even a little tuck shop now.
And there's a tuck shop?
Yeah. Nika started a little business here where she's selling stuff to occupiers.
This space is an intended play area that we want to spruce up for the children that are here.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, okay. Rental opportunities in or close to the center of the city are extremely limited and costly. The average rent of a one-bedroom apartment is about 13,000 Rand. But with a monthly minimum wage of 3,000 Rand, low-income families can't afford these market-price apartments. Hence the urgent need for affordable housing development. Sarita and the local citizens want to prove to the authorities that creative solutions to a problem of this magnitude can be found in the most surprising places, like here in an abandoned hospital. Oh yeah, you can really see the whole building here.
Yeah. When Reclaim the City started, it started because of a piece of land in Sea Point called the Tafelberg site. And this piece of publicly owned land was in the middle of a wealthy suburb. And the housing department in the province said this piece of land is perfect for housing. Next thing you know, it was sold to a private developer, a private school, for like over 100 million Rand. And this piece of land that could have been really like set the tone of desegregating Cape Town, showing that it was possible to build affordable housing in the inner city, because that's never happened before, just by the way. And that made people completely outraged. So a bunch of activists got together from across Cape Town and they're like, that's it, enough is enough. We're going to occupy public buildings in the inner city to demand that affordable housing be provided. In the end, that's what everyone's fighting for. It's dignity, to be recognized as human enough to be able to live with your family securely, not precariously, not wondering every day whether you'll be kicked out, but knowing that you're protected, that you're safe, that the state is on your side. I think that is really what people are calling for, and at the moment, they don't feel that way. They feel like they're being abandoned, that they're being chucked to the outskirts of the city, and especially in a city like ours, with a history like ours, to just let the market run its course is completely naive and completely unjust, because it's very clear that what's happening is not fair, and it's actually entrenching what apartheid did rather than addressing it. So I think for people, it's a very simple fact, like recognize that we're human, recognize that we have dignity. And it's a basic principle of being able to live securely and safely, right? Yeah.
Basic human rights.
Exactly.
It looks like the city of Cape Town is finally listening to its citizens' needs. City Hall has recently announced that 5 affordable housing projects will see the light of day in the near future in the city center. But like anywhere else in the world, you have to wonder, how much is talk, how much is walk? To get a sense of how things are moving along here, I meet up with Brett Heron, the man in charge of the city's 2 most pressing issues, urban development and transport, nothing less.
What is it like to be you, working for the city of Cape Town, facing all of these overwhelming challenges?
There are enormous challenges that we have to deal with in an environment with constrained financial resources, a long history of oppression, and our apartheid history still very much defines the spatial reality of our city and the inequalities in our city.
How do you start the approach? I mean, for me, I see housing as one of the primary tasks at hand when you were out in these informal settlements. I mean, it's just, you know, it really is a moving experience. What is the state of the nation in Cape Town for tackling that?
So housing, I think, is our biggest crisis. And we are projecting that we need to provide 650,000 housing opportunities to families who qualify for state assistance over the next 15 years. 650,000. It's a mammoth task. Yeah. We are currently providing about 10,000 in a good year, a year. So housing is our biggest crisis. We have pursued, consecutive democratic governments have pursued high numbers of housing delivery at the expense of location. So we create these suburbs of poverty, and that is not addressing the history of our city and is not addressing the exclusion, the social and economic exclusion. So where people live actually matters. And that is the task that we are grappling with right now, to find higher density housing in better locations. The densities are there, the jobs are here, and the public transport is poor.
How do you improve the transport system, and what does Cape Town have planned in that department?
The first challenge in our transport system is the fragmentation. So we have 3 modes of transport: BRT, scheduled bus, commuter rail, operated by 3 different authorities. So no wonder there's fragmentation. A journey is not a sensible journey for anybody if you've got to cross those modes. And then we have the informal public transport sector, the minibus taxis, which is licensed by provincial government to operate. So the starting point is for the city to be the authority over all of those modes of transport. We have to integrate those modes, get one ticket, one timetable, one authority, one plan, and we have been really fighting hard to get that done.
Beyond the absence of centralized transport logistics, Cape Town has to fix its rail network. Overused and underfunded, trains are literally falling apart here. Delays and canceled trains are the daily norm, even though a massive number of Cape Townians count on them. At peak hours, passengers sit on window ledges or even climb onto the roof just to get to work.
Our commuter rail service is now so unreliable, irregular, trains being cancelled, and the condition of the trains is so appalling. People are dying. Someone died on the train because they were traveling on the roof. So we have to get the rail system right.
95% of public transport users live on a low income and depend on the informal minibus taxis to get around. The city recently tried to replace the informal network with an official bus rapid transit system. But it quickly became apparent that people relied on the flexibility, frequency, and affordability of the minibus system. As a result, only 2% of the population uses the BRT. Let's face it, the informal taxis are here to stay.
We have about 500,000 people who walk to work every day because they can't afford public transport. So it's not just infrastructure, it's not just planning, it's not desire lines, it's also access.
How do you, as a city hall, try to make people feel included in the grander project that is Cape Town?
We have to remember that racial segregation, racial oppression, racial exclusion happened over many, many, many decades. We're not going to achieve that in 23 years of democracy. It's going to take decades. Whatever project we do, we have to put it through that lens of is it going to build a city that's more inclusive, more caring, well-run, full of opportunity, and safe. Those are the pillars that we're striving towards. We can't have the expectation that what happened in April 1994 changed South Africa. We've all got work to do every single day to change South Africa, and it's going to take, that work will continue long beyond my lifetime.
South Africa's alarming unemployment rate is still at the core of the social divide that plagues daily life. Let's face it, communities here still live in separate bubbles that rarely intersect. Josh founded Fix Forward to bridge that gap. He connects homeowners, mostly white, with tradesmen, mostly black or colored. And they're not only fixing houses. They're building trust between citizens emerging from very different backgrounds.
Gladman. Hi, Josh.
Was it difficult to find jobs before you connected with Fix Forward?
Yes, it was difficult, man. It was very difficult because it was not easy for us black people to connect with the white people because they are not trusting us.
We're ready to do some work.
So you help connect the laborers with, like in wealthy neighborhoods, apartments and whatnot?
Yes, yeah. So we connect them to people who live in the more affluent areas, as well as to large businesses who are wanting renovations or maintenance service done on their properties.
Like the factory shop here, right.
There's a lot of sort of negative preconception that particularly sort of many of the wealthy white homeowners have about people from low-income areas and about black people in particular.
Are they literally scared?
I think for many they literally are scared, you know, particularly for single sort of older women who have really, you know, lived through the years of apartheid. There was a lot of collective white fear around even what the transition to democracy would bring with black people taking over control of the country. There was real fear that people had for their personal safety. So there's a lot of that we are trying to challenge and overcome, but there is definitely also this concept or preconception that people have that even if I trust this individual from a personal perspective, the quality of their work is going to be substandard.
It's all quite simple. Fix Forward acts as a safety net between the client and the tradesman carrying out the work. If the client's not happy with the work, Fix Forward, well, they'll fix it, which almost never happens. There are now more than 100 tradesmen working and building trust in this Cape Town project, and Joshua hopes to expand, creating similar possibilities in Johannesburg and beyond.
We've got big ambitions to export the model outside of South Africa. A couple of years back we were in Colombia, we spent 10 days there. There's a lot of interest in the Fix Forward model there because of the class divides, the sort of the distrust between rich and poor and the need for someone to come in and bridge those communities. In Austria even, which was a surprise to me, there's a lot of interest in what we're doing because obviously you have the whole situation with the immigrants and again there's this issue of distrust and so there's a lot of interest as well to see how we can apply the model there. So it's not only for developing countries but it's also for the sort of more developed industrialized countries. When apartheid ended, things didn't suddenly all fit into place and black people were suddenly afforded these amazing opportunities and people's lives improved. People are still struggling under the legacy of the systems that apartheid created. And I think by and large, white people have very little understanding of what that experience is. When I was living up in Johannesburg, I used to spend a lot of time on the weekends going to this particular township, Diepsloot. I'd go and watch football games with my friend Simon there. We'd go and have a beer at the Shebeen, at the, you know, sort of the local pub. I had guys coming up to me who I could clearly see were working on laborers' wages. You know, these are people who are living pretty well below the poverty line, offering to buy me a beer, you know.
Is this a one-way street?
Yeah, for us, you see on the building site, I can tell you something. We go and build a house there. And then after you build that house, you can't enter that house when it's completely finished.
Wow.
But you are the person who are building the house.
Yeah.
So that's another story, man. That's happening most of the
ironic,
time.
Yeah.
We're not going to stop until we change, until we change things.
Sorry.
You said sorry. I should say sorry.
It's like that.
We're in a white Hyundai H01. Here are guys.
All right. We're heading into one of the townships called Hanover Park, and it's not easy access. It's a gang-controlled area. It all has to be prearranged. We can't just drive into this area.
You'll see guys that will come out with mobile phones. It goes viral pretty quickly when there's a foreign van or a car.
They know the cars even?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, damn. Yeah, there's a lot of eyes on us. All right. Okay, here we go. Michael. Nice to meet you, man.
Hanover Park, a mere 20 minutes outside the city center, but it feels like a whole different planet. In 2012, there were 42 murders here. 42 out of a population of about 50,000 people. You can't just walk on the street here. Gangs are everywhere, on every corner. The residents endure their daily dose of shootings and the rampant fear it generates.
The Hanover Park can get very violent at times. We can get up to 100 incidents happening in a month, between 10 and 20 people shot in a month.
Wow.
And that's how...
In this neighborhood here?
In this neighborhood, yeah. They don't ask questions, they first shoot and then they ask the question.
The only reason I'm here with my camera crew is this man. Craven Engel doesn't sell drugs and he doesn't shoot people. In fact, he's probably never done anything illegal in his entire life. But he knows all the Hanover Park gang lords by their nicknames. And that's because this seasoned pastor hires ex-gang leaders to become interrupters for Ceasefire, the Chicago-inspired initiative he founded after burying yet another 12-year-old.
They're called interrupters, they're credible messengers. They used to belong to gangs, they used to be in prison, so now the gangs is open to talk to them about anything. But the main job of the interrupter is to interrupt the shooter of shooting.
Right.
Just to keep people safe and to reduce shootings.
They've installed sound sensors throughout the entire neighborhood. Each time there's a shooting, interrupters receive the exact location through an app on their mobile phone. And they run straight towards the danger.
There was a shot fired on that particular area, so he will get the signal coming to his phone. Okay. And then 2 seconds later from that incident, it will be on this system and we can listen to the shot right here.
Okay, how come there's so many M's here? Is that like just where they hang out, or?
No, this was all shots fired between these two groups here.
Ah, okay.
In the last 2 months, there was an altercation between these two groups. This is the gang this side, it's the gang that side, open field in the middle.
Oh, we got this is a cool neighborhood right now. You got all the kids out and everything?
Yeah, the people is cool, but you know, it's almost like people is already desensitized about shooting.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So what we want to do is resensitize them.
I mean, you have the issues, but it is a community, right?
Their parents are here, their sisters are here, their brothers are here, their children are here.
Yeah.
They're not separate of the community. It doesn't change the fact that their core purpose is to make some money, is to build territory.
How do the gangs feel when one of their members leaves?
They feel proud about you.
Okay.
And it's one of ours. If you change your life and you go for better and you add value to your family, you add value to society, the gangs will respect that. Yay, Tabo! Wat is dit? Ja, mooi aangetrek, jong. Ik zie de alle achter mij nou die dag. Ja, no, this is the shooters we're dealing with now.
Okay.
That's one of our guys talking to a shooter. The guy that greeted me now is a shooter. He's probably got about 15 or 16 murders on his,
The guy on the bike.
That spoke to me now. So our relationship is with the shooters.
Great.
Going in.
Going in?
Yeah, we're going in.
We weren't in before.
That's not in, brother. That's a terminus.
Okay.
This is in. So this family here also lost an individual here. If you want to see an interrupter, you'll find them on the beach.
They're hanging out here with the
high risk, They are measuring the atmosphere.
Yeah.
They are rating the individuals. They are punching in data all the time. So when they collect it, they will know how to intervene when there's an incident.
Both of my cousins were executed in the same year. They come due to the fact of my 3 children that I have. Something just popped up in my head. I had to make a change in life. So I reached out to Ceasefire, they reached out back, and there comes the change.
So if Ceasefire wasn't here in Hanover Park,
I would have never been a change.
You'd be doing the same thing, or you'd be dead.
Same thing all over and over.
He said, "Oh, you'll be dead."
Yeah, sorry.
It may seem like a joke, but I assure you, it's not. Murder in this square is nothing unusual. Tashlim, like the 10 other interrupters from Ceasefire, decided he'd had enough. And it works. From 2012 to 2016, fatal shootings decreased by 26% here. So yeah, they're actually saving lives.
Most of the day I had to interrupt on a daily basis because violence occurs anytime. Violence had no schedule. Even like I used to affiliate with them. I was.
Oh, this was your game.
Yeah.
All right.
I had to be careful.
Is it risky for you?
Look, It's a high-risk area. You got to always keep your alerts on all the time.
Yeah. At what age do the children get recruited by the
13
gangs?
years old, 12 years old.
12, huh?
Yeah. Pair of Nikes.
Yeah, yeah.
And a Nike tracksuit like that.
Yeah. So they bribe them in a way.
They bribe them
yeah.
in a way, yes.
Promise them money and...
Yeah, what your mother can buy you, your father can buy you, they will buy it for you.
Okay. You also think about the kids, because they're growing up in that, man.
We've got what we call an outreach component. We're at the center now.
Yeah.
So the center facilitates an early intervention for youth at risk.
Yeah.
So it's more prevention, you know. But there's not a lot happening for kids. It's a struggle.
Many of the children growing up here have never set foot outside their neighborhood. So Craven and his team also organize field trips to Table Mountain, the downtown area, and the beach, just to show them that their city is so much more than just shootings and violence. The good people of Waves for Change, a small surfing club, have, in a way, the same goal. Like so many things in Cape Townian society, even the ocean stayed segregated after the end of apartheid. That was before Waves for Change. They want to give the ocean back to the whole community, no matter who you are or where you're from. Today, more than 500 kids from the nearby townships take surf lessons with Apish and Michelle, two locals who volunteer to lead and expand the club.
How do you feel when you're in the surf, man?
I feel like I'm like just a champion because I'm here in surfing. Most of things that are out there, they're like terrible. So when I'm here, I feel like happy, and I'm safe here.
It's very tough in the township. There's violence, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, neglect. They've been through a lot. Now we bring them here to create a support group, get them together to share our problems and also come up with solutions on how do we face those problems. And I'm using the ocean as a metaphor. Life goes on, you have to fall and then crawl back and try again.
So it's kind of in a way opening a door out of the townships, showing them that the world is much bigger than their street. And I mean, in a way, yeah, physical activity is also good with kids.
Physical activities to keep them safe and also to keep them fit and healthy. And the more you feel good about yourself, looking good, you also do good, taking like right decisions. Ocean is very therapeutic, even if they're not feeling well from whatever happened in the township back home. Once they get there in the ocean, they said they wish they could stay there forever, they feel good about themselves, and they just forget about the things or stuff that's happening in the background.
So physical freedom from the township, but also mental freedom from the struggles of daily life.
Yeah.
That's what the ocean can do for them, huh?
Okay, Sisonge.
Simunye.
Simunye.
Sisonge.
Let's give ourselves a banana kilo.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, kilo. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Protect, respect, communicate, share.
You were one of these kids before?
Yeah. Then I became a coach.
So you went to the ocean and you had to stay at the ocean, huh?
Yeah, I had no idea actually. I've never been at the beach, and that's when I came through surfing.
How has this changed your life?
It has changed my life on becoming more aware of things and thinking positively about my life and expecting challenges in life. That's, yeah.
So
and how to solve them. Actually, I'm the first lady to start surfing in my community, so that has a very big impact in me that I can achieve something, not by people doing it for people, doing it for myself. I could say I'm a role model to them because I'm there and they talk many things with me, so we share a lot of things together, so yeah.
And you're like, you know, hey, I did it, why not you? Come on, let's go, girls. Yeah. What about you? How did you get into the program? Were you a surfer before?
No, I've never surfed before, I've never swim before, I didn't know how to swim. And I'm now a lifeguard, a child UK caretaker as well.
Why is it important for you to help these kids?
It's also sharing what I have, not just helping them because they need help, but also investing in them so that they could also bring the change and they could also be the role models for other young generation that coming after them.
So I'd rather put it like that, and then we just fit the number in, just take a few houses out.
After meeting amazing, inspiring people, I decided to get PJS, Section P, Joe Slovo, added to my urban map. I just think that the community and the struggles that they experience every day is symbolic for me of the city as a whole. Wow, that's cool. Fits in perfectly with Medellin, Comuna 8, and Paris. PJS now has a riverfront. Many cities have a double identity, usually due to economic inequality, a line between the haves and the have-nots. In Cape Town, however, there are so many levels. Hard borders between the rich and the poor, between classes and races, demonstrative physical segregation of citizens. I have the utmost respect for the brave people who inhabit this place, and for the people like those I've met who are trying to make things better, trying to drag Cape Town out of the mud of colonialism, of apartheid, and of inequality. What I've seen is small projects, but they're tactical, strategic, and they're scalable. Simple tools like data, design, and empowerment. In a nutshell, knowledge. Hope is eternal, but only combined with that knowledge will Cape Town rise to face the challenges of the future.